Hey guys, here again with another Sergey knife. Today we have in front of us the TiHatium. Now, this custom was available at TKI SoCal 2022 that happened earlier this year. It was an open piece. My friend was able to snag it, and I'm here to take a look at it for you guys today. So I really appreciate him doing that. Of course, it really allows me to take a look at some of these, the customs, of which they can go for pretty high prices at auction. So again, I really appreciate that, and hopefully be able to provide you guys more customs again in the near future. But anyways, the TiHatium. People really were wondering where the name was coming from. TiHatium, I think, is a portmanteau of titanium and hati, titanium being the material of the handles on both sides on this one. The hati is a model in the Shurogrov lineup. Titanium frame lock with composite material show side. This one right here obviously doesn't have composite material on the show side, so that's why I think we have the name TiHatium. A lot of people were thinking, well, isn't that just an F95? Yeah, but there are some design differences compared to, I think, what people think of as the F95. That seemed to be unique to this model since there have been multiple TiHatiums at this point now. So the name, I think, really kind of stuck. Sounds kind of cool. I like it. That's really all there is to it. Don't really have to dig too deep into the naming scheme here. It just sounds cool. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the knife. This knife has some really cool features, of which I'll talk about later as we go into the kind of internal discussion. But anyways, it's an F95 size knife. Not too much to talk about there, since the hati and F95 are the same size. Here's another F95 size knife for comparison. So we're looking at a 4-inch overall cutting length. Let's take a look at the weight. I think that'll be a lot more interesting. Let's see here. You can see we're looking at, ooh, that doesn't sound right. Oh. There we go. We're looking at 4.1211 ounces, so almost a full ounce lighter than the F95 Zero, the production version of the F95, which I believe is just a little bit over 5.06 ounces. We'll see why. It pretty much has to do with the thinness of the knife. Multiple parts of the knife are quite thin. Actually, before we take a look at the knife in detail, always good to go over the coin here, which comes with all the customs. You can see this is the newer coin with the more intricate design. It says TiHatium, the name of the knife. We have the blade, which is Vinland Damasteel. The handle is titanium with Damasteel hardware as well. You can see we have PLDS 2.0, which is the pivot system, and the bearings are double row rollers. We have Sergey's signature and the date at which the knife was completed for 2022, so just before the TKI SoCal show. And the finish on this coin, I think, is one of the nicer ones. It looks like it's been polished and then tumbled, but doesn't have that kind of scratch tumbled finish that we've seen on some of the other custom coins. So I like that. Taking a look at the blade here, we have Vinland Damasteel, as the coin says. The blade stock is quite thin at 3 millimeters. Now, this is considered very thin for Shurogrov, as the traditional thin blade stock was 3.5 millimeters, like you see here on this Sprint Run Stellar. You can see, taking a look at the flipper tabs, just how much thinner that is. Half a millimeter can mean quite a big difference in terms of blade stock. We've seen 3.5 become the new normal on some knives, such as the 111 Gen 5, but many other knives are still coming with that traditional 4 millimeter blade stock, such as the F3NS and the F95 Zero, and the Quantum as well, or at least the Gen 1 Quantum. So I guess the Gen 2 Quantum does have 3.5 millimeters as well, but anyways, I digress. Now, taking a look at the blade profile, you can see that we have a similar profile to the hati magnetic. Definitely encourage you to take a look at that video if you haven't already on that custom division model, since there's going to be a lot of design similarities, which I'll talk about in this video. You can see we have satin flats. We have that unique kind of TiHatium / hati magnetic extract cut. We also have the swedge running here on the top. The jimping, it's a little difficult to see with the Damasteel pattern here, but there is jimping on the blade, that new wide style jimping. and of course that wide belly profile that has pretty much become standardized on the F95 style knives. The sand flats really help with the action here, especially it being Damasteel. Really no worries here about the blade being Damasteel affecting the action. Very smooth. Moving on to the handle, you can see we have what I like to call an enhanced version of the Hati wave. The Hati magnetic still has the normal Hati wave pattern, but the TiHatium has kind of an enhanced version of that, especially it being plain titanium. A pattern like this I think can really show through. I like to think of this as the normal Hati wave pattern with kind of these intersecting waves that cause these ridges to appear on the handle in various spots. Really complex pattern. I really love how Sergey takes the time to do these really intricate kind of patterns. I can't imagine how long it takes for him to kind of imagine the stuff and then program the CAD files to go ahead and mill something like this. Really awesome work here. If you take a look, the ridges really catch the light. Taking a look at the pivot here, you can see we have a pivot that's made out of Damasteel, which I think is really awesome. It's the new faceted pivot design. So you can see the layers of the Damasteel, and then also on the top part, which is flat, if you take a look here, you can see that he's done a satin finish. So we have the outline of the kind of signature duckfoot screw shape for Sergey's customs. We also have these kind of, I like to call it handle extract cuts on the corner of the knife, just like the Hati magnetic. But unlike the Hati magnetic, the titanium here is finished smooth. And again, this is something that we see more often on the customs, where will be kind of extra finishing done here to smooth out the machining marks. A lot of people really like the milling, but again, I always like to call out that finishing the titanium after it gets off the CNC to remove all these lines is easier than kind of milling in a pattern to hide those machining marks. So I really like to see that those differences, those subtle differences from the custom vision to the custom versions. Moving on here, you can see the real screw. You can see it's a smaller diameter than what we have on the magnetic. And that's really part of that PLDS 2.0 system, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Very interesting and complex, kind of increases the complexity of the pivot on the lock side, which I think is cool as well, as well as having the smaller diameter screw, which seems to be finished, seems to be made out of normal steel, contrasts quite well with the PLDS kind of retaining portion here that's still done in Damasteel, and also with the satin flats on top, just like the show side. We have that wave milling pattern, of course, continuing on the lock side here. Taking a look, we also have the clip that is done in Damasteel, and just like the magnetic, we have a little relief cut so that the screw will clear, just like on the Hati magnetic as well. The backspacer is also made in Damasteel, and just like the magnetic, we have kind of that floating effect, which allows the backspacer to be made a little bit thinner, kind of emphasizing that thinness effect, which is really an overall theme for the knife here. Very, very thin, especially when putting it up against a fat knife like my F7 here. You can see just how thin everything looks. Also in front, like the magnetic, we have the handle kind of taper up here to kind of protect you from, getting your hand sliced. Really not an issue that I've had with any knife, even the F95s or F7s here. You can see, even if I run my finger across here, I'm not really slicing my fingers or anything. I also think that this is a really cool design element, as I don't know if I mentioned this in the Hati magnetic video, but you can see how this line kind of falls down underneath the backspacer. This is not only to house the backspacer, but if you were to take the knife apart and take a look at the internal milling, this line right here actually follows the profile of the blade when the blade is closed in the handle. So that's something really cool that I think you can't really see unless you open apart the knife. But again, it's a nice touch nonetheless. And also at the top here where it meets the handle spine, you can see, again, it tapers up here, which also doubles to protect you from the blade as well. Now, Unlike the magnetic, you can see here that the screw, the rear screw is a blind screw. So you only have the screw visible here on this side. And that screw also is satin finished, which is quite nice. Taking a look here at the front. Now, a lot of people were asking about this, so I just wanted to reiterate. The reason why this portion is raised here is because with a lock bar insert that is screwed in from the inside, you can see just how thick that lock bar insert is compared to the overall thickness of the lock bar. So you don't have that much thread engagement here for the screw. So what Sergey has done is kind of given a raise this portion here to allow more thread engagement. And in fact, you can see that compared to other knives where this is a thing, this screw diameter is quite small on the end here. Usually the diameter of the screw when it pokes out is about twice the size of this. One example I think would be good to demonstrate this would be the Custom Division Neon NL. I believe I have a video up of that. But the reason for this is actually this lock bar insert screw is tapered. I've seen this on suppressors for guns where that taper will actually allow more physical contact on the screw to kind of the lock bar here, which I'm assuming will help kind of retain that with some kind of tension as you torque down the screw. Kind of just a guess, but it was very interesting to see the lock bar insert screw be tapered at the end. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the external features of the knife. Internally, we have that PLDS 2.0 pivot system. Now, for you guys who had not watched the magnetic video, which kind of demonstrated the PLDS 1.0 system, this is the next iteration of that. It's 2.0. PLDS stands for Pivot Load Distribution System. And basically, the system was created to kind of address some of the tolerance stacking issues that you can get with composite materials, which flex significantly more than titanium. What this means, especially on a knife such as the Hati, is when you have that traditional Hati design where you have a female pivot screw with a shaft going through that's internally threaded, when you torque down the male screw, it ends up pinching both handles together as you torque down the screw. What PLDS seeks to solve is have a system where tightening the screw doesn't actually compress the handles. It's only compressing the pivot system. Now, how this is achieved is on the 2.0 version, having a screw that is female threaded and that goes all the way through the handles. So this kind of external, what looks like the head of the screw, goes all the way through the handle and actually also contains the bearing race and the bearings. Now, what this means is that this kind of the assembly part of the PLDS on the right side of the handle is press fit into the knife and then glued and press fit into the knife. And then the same is done on the left side. And so when this tiny screw is torqued down, it's threading into the right side, but compressing the left side into the blade. So both parts are being compressed into the blade, and instead of compressing the material directly, instead of compressing the handles directly, they're kind of just in it for the ride, right? Like, because both PLDS sides are press fit and glued into the handles, when the screw is tightened down, it's really only tightened down on the pivot part. Now, I'm gonna post some pictures in the description. Hopefully, if you take a look at that, it'll make more sense. The next question then really is, what is the difference between PLDS 1.0 and 2.0? Now, 1.0 on the Hati magnetic, if you notice, has the knife with pivot collars and still that traditional female threaded shaft assembly, the same screw assembly that we see on the production knives. PLDS 2.0 has eliminated that and instead has gone for a single solid piece that on the show side, which kind of precludes the use of a pivot collar. The pivot collar and the female pivot screw have been integrated into one solid piece here. What this also means is the reduced diameter screw here actually serves as the pivot shaft and extends all the way through and actually has contact with the blade as well. This screw goes all the way through and then has some threading and threads into the show side portion of the PLDS. Again, take a look at the pictures. I think it'll make a little bit more sense than my verbal explanation of it. And I know a lot of you guys really like to take a look at the inside of these things, so I will make sure to post pictures in the description. And yeah, hopefully you can understand it there. But I think the last question when it comes to this knife, after I kind of explained what PLDS is doing, is, well, why does it need to be done on a knife that's titanium? And really, I don't know why. I think really Sergey just wanted to show off the new system and have it on a titanium knife, something that is completely overkill for a handle material that completely doesn't even require it. And I think really that's the beauty of the TiHatium. Kind of really cool blade materials, unique backspacer and clip materials. Really, you don't see him doing steel for those kind of hardware. The freaking pivot is Damasteel. That also means that the bearings are riding on unetched Damasteel as well. And then we have this PLDS system on top of it, the 2.0 variation as well, where this is a very complex piece. If you take a look, that's going all the way through the handle. It not only serves as the external facing screw, which of course is decorative and unique. On the inside, it's precision. It's set into the handles at the correct depth, so that doesn't need to be fiddled with. And then it's ground and polished just to have a smooth surface for the bearings because it acts as the bearing race. It's just really cool. One thing that this actually does mean, though, is that the system that Sergey had been using, kind of the new premier bearing system, the next generation of DRRBS, had been a phosphor bronze ring that would act to seal out any contaminants. Because of the way the PLDS system works, there really just isn't enough space to have that kind of phosphor bronze ring as well. So I find it very interesting to see that Sergey has opted to kind of move towards that instead of continue having the benefits of that phosphor bronze ring to seal out the action. Now, I believe if you want to hear more about that, take a look at my video on the custom Stellaris that I reviewed a while back. That one knife does have the phosphor bronze ring DRRBS system. So that video should explain kind of the benefits and how it actually works. But again, I find it really interesting, especially now that he's come out with a couple of other knives that have this PLDS system as well, such as the shoot, what was that video? I didn't do I don't have the knife, but some of the quantum NLs that were available at the show also had that PLDS 2.0 system as well. So again, really interesting, and Sergey's really doing a lot of things to kind of advance the kind of art of modern, tactical folding knives. And, it's not just about aesthetics. I think there's some real technical innovations that he's doing here. And PLDS is one of, I think, his crowning achievements, at least so far. So again, I hope you enjoyed the explanation for this knife. That was a lot of stuff to talk about. This video went on way longer than I thought, but again, there's just so much cool stuff going on here. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.